I was arrested at the age of 16 for a murder and rape that I did not commit, and ultimately I was wrongfully convicted of that. So my wrongful conviction, which happened at the age of 17, was caused by coerced false confession, prosecutorial misconduct, fraud by the medical examiner, terrible public defender. I lost even though the DNA didn't match me. I was given a 15 to life sentence because I had been charged as an adult. And I then spent 16 years in a men's maximum security prison from age 17 to 32, losing 7 appeals, getting turned down for parole because I maintained my innocence, going through that, and then ultimately being exonerated through further DNA testing, which identified the actual perpetrator. Fast forward to today, and I'm an attorney now. I've been cleared, and I have a nonprofit organization, the Jeffrey Deskovic Foundation for Justice, which has freed 11 people. We've helped pass 3 laws aimed at preventing wrongful conviction. I'm an advisory board member for the group It Could Happen to You, and we passed another 6 laws. Currently, we have 17 cases, and we're working on policy changes in New York, Pennsylvania, and California.
It's fascinating. It's unbelievable what you've been through, and how common that this is in the judicial system in the United States, for people getting wrongfully convicted. So what was the story of the girl who was, I think she moved from Colombia to New York?
Yeah.
And she was in a high school with you?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Angela Carrera was her name. She moved from Colombia. She was living, as I understood it, she was living a very sheltered life. She was in the country for about 1.5 years. And, ultimately she was, she went missing on November 15th, 1989, and her body was found a couple of days later on November 17th, 1989, and, she had been raped and murdered.
And how old was she?
She was 15 years old.
15 years old. And you guys were friends in high school, right?
We were not. I knew her name. She knew mine. She was in a couple of classes as a freshman, one as a sophomore. That was it. I think in 2 years, I briefly spoke to her twice. So we were not even really on a hi-bye basis.
Now, did you guys interact at all? Was it just like randomly passing by? You met her a couple times, but you didn't really talk to her much. Did you?
Yeah, it was the latter. Like you said, she just by coincidence or by school schedule, she happened to be in 2 of my classes as a freshman, one as a sophomore. Like I said, I briefly spoke with her twice. One time was I passed a note to her on behalf of a male classmate who was interested in her, and he was kind of nervous to approach, so he asked me to pass it to her, and that was really it.
So the day she went missing in 1989, I believe it was, right?
Yes, it was. Yeah, November 15th, 1989.
So the day she went missing, where were you at? What was going on? What was that day like?
It was just like any other day in terms of the school day. After school, I had a friend named Jason, and he lived nearby where I lived at, and we had developed a rather innovative way of playing one-on-one in wiffle ball, and so I played wiffle ball with him that day, and had dinner at his house, and around I would say around 8 or 9 o'clock, I left his house on my bike, and I drove down the hill about like less than 10 minutes away and got to my house. And that's what I was doing that day.
And I think that day when she left her house and she went to like a popular hangout area in the woods in mid-afternoon, I believe it was.
Yes, so let me give some backstory. So Angela was in a photography class, and the teacher had assigned the whole class, including her, to take pictures of some foliage. So after school, she went back to her house with her older sister. The teacher had assigned like a buddy system like for the protection of the students. Like a male student was matched up with a female student, and so she went back to her house. Her sister went to the bathroom. When she came back out, Angela wasn't there. She left on her own. So she went to the park to take pictures of the foliage. And the male student played hooky on the assignment, so he never showed up. So she was taking pictures on this. There's a path between Hillcrest and Peekskill, New York, at Hillcrest condominiums there's Hillcrest there's the Hillcrest school, and then there's condominiums, and there's like a woods and a macadam path that links the two. And so she went down onto the path, which is not that far away from this wooded area called, which is called the Pit, which teenage kids used to drink at and used to make out. That wasn't very far from off of the path. She's on this path with heavy woods, taking pictures, and she comes across Stephen Cunningham, who's a drug addict and who's high, and he sees her, he attacks her, murders and rapes her.
This guy was smoking crack, I think it was.
That
right?
is correct.
And how old was he?
At the time of the crime, he was 29 years old. And so, and Angela was 15, and at the time I was 16. I never saw him a day in my life. It was just kind of like a random encounter. It was just unfortunate that she came across him at that time, and, that's what gave the occasion for him to attack her and, do what he did.
So he attacked her. Obviously, he murdered her.
Mm-hmm.
At what point did she get reported missing, and how long after that did they discover the body?
Yeah, I think that she got reported missing later, like early evening, that late afternoon, early evening. She got reported missing, and her, it was even ran in there was a local paper called the Evening Star. It was a daily newspaper, a Gannett paper, and they ran a story, teen missing, had her picture and everything, and and then a couple of days later they ran a follow-up story. Her body had been found, naked from the waist down.
Right. Yeah, they found her body, and obviously she had been beaten. I think she had a lot of head trauma.
That's right.
They found a bludgeon wound on her head that was like an inch deep, and they said a Gatorade bottle or something.
Well, the
Hit her?
Gatorade bottle comes in later. So
okay.
I'll get into that. I know what you're getting at, though.
Okay.
So she had like a deep head wound in the back, and so that was the medical examiner. I mean, he kind of flip flops a little bit. I mean, in one hand he says, well, the wound on the top of the head, that's what killed her, but then he also says, well, either that or strangulation.
Okay.
So he can't really determine which of those two things actually is what caused the death, but both of them occurred to her. We're going to get to the Gatorade bottle after.
Okay. And so the people investigating this, is it just the local police department?
It's just the local Peekskill Police Department, yes. And there had been very few murders in Peekskill overall. So, their inexperience, I think, was definitely a factor.
Not a common thing to happen.
Not a common thing to happen at that town, no. So in the course of the police investigation, the police interviewed many students from the high school, and some of the kids told the police that they might want to speak with me because I didn't quite fit in. So this is what the police said originally put me on their radar. An additional factor is that I was a sensitive teenager. This was my real first brush with death, and I had an emotional reaction to that. So the police thought that this emotional reaction that I had was suspicious, like it was some sort of outward sign for something that I was sorry I did. But we have these two reasons that I've just laid out why I'm on the police radar. Mm-hmm. And then there's a third thing, which is that the Peekskill Police, they got a psychological profile from the NYPD. So they turned to a more experienced police department, and look, give us this profile. What type of person should we be looking for? What were their characteristics? And so I had the misfortune of matching this profile. I mean, this profile said, well, it's likely someone that knew her, someone that was a loner, likely somebody in the high school. Well, that fits me.